Now to some of your top consumer headlines. We may be in for more chaos at the airports again if Congress does not act. That is the warning from the Department of Homeland Security. The DHS secretary told Fox News that he will run out of money to pay workers, including TSA agents, the first week of May. Right now, they're being paid with money from President Donald Trump's domestic policy bill after he issued an executive order last month. But available funds for that purpose are about to dry up. Congress is still gridlocked, with Democrats opposed to fully reopening the DHS without major changes to immigration and customs enforcement.